Defenders, Easter eggs, references, and trivia. These are the Easter eggs and references and trivia that I noticed. I'm sure there's going to be a few that I did miss. If I did, please let me know in the or let us know rather in the comments section below. Also, I'm going to be going over spoilers, so if you have not seen this show at all, just be warned. Make sure you check out the show before you watch this video. Otherwise, we're going to push on right now. Starting at number 1, we got Matt Murdock and Jessica Jones. When they're looking for the blueprints, Matt's playing the piano, and if you listen very closely, you can hear a variation of the Defenders theme, and to be more specific, you hear the portions of the Daredevil and the Jessica Jones portion of the Defenders theme, so that's really interesting right there. Number 2, we got Misty Knight's bionic arm. Now, Kabuto ends up cutting off Misty Knight's arm in the final episode, and that actually happens in the comic books. And what happens in the comics is Misty's arm comes off in a bomb, and Tony Stark is the one who actually replaces it with a bionic arm, and this bionic arm gives her superpowers. So basically, we've now seen an origin story of that. So now we know that Danny Rand is going to be providing that portion of her arm, rather, because we heard that Colleen Wing tell her that Danny's got a special hospital wing department that he can provide for you. So that's going to be really cool to see Danny provide that bionic arm, hopefully. Now we got the original Night Nurse. Now when Misty Knight, after she loses her arm, she's in the hospital wing, and if you look on the back on the bulletin board, you see it says L. Carter. Now that is actually Linda Carter, and she was the original Night Nurse until she was brought back by Brian Michael Bendis. And also what's interesting is that she had a thing, she looks over the superheroes of the Marvel Universe, of course, but what's interesting is she has a relationship with Doctor Strange, and this was obviously explored in the Doctor Strange film, but they used the Christine Palmer version, I believe was her name, played by Rachel McAdams. So I'm not sure if we're ever going to see her, but that was cool to get that Easter egg and nod there. Matt Murdock and Jessica Jones' first meeting in the interrogation room is straight out of Alias issue number 3, and where they meet the exact same way she's being interrogated, and a lot of the dialogue and the shot-for-shot visuals are very reminiscent of that specific comic. Super Friends. Now, we get the line, I'm not looking for Super Friends. Super Friends was actually an animated WB cartoons show where we see members of the Justice League that came out years ago, so could be a little bit of a Marvel jab at DC, but either way, it's a fun little DC reference. Also, we got Danny Rand posing as possibly the Daredevil, taking up the Daredevil mantle. Now, what happens in the comic books, and I know that he was not wearing the Daredevil costume or even his own costume, rather he was kind of wearing a little variation of his colors without the mask, of course. But in the comic books, a lot of times when Matthew Murdock does not want his identity being revealed that he's Daredevil, he has other members of the Defenders or Marvel members take up the mantle as Daredevil, and this happens in the comics with Danny Rand, where he does take up the mantle as Daredevil. So the trickery of the shot with seeing the city in the background, how they made you think it was Matthew Murdock in that shot, I thought that was really interesting, and he did promise Matt that he would protect the city, so I think that's kind of interesting that he might be taking up that mantle possibly. Obviously, we do know Matthew Murdock survived, but still, just that image, that visual imagery, and then that promise he made to Matt. So, all right, so now in this one, this is in the final episode, we see the whole team fighting in a long tracking shot, and then they come together, and then we see the camera circle around the entire team. This is a nod and a reference back to Joss Whedon's The Avengers back in 2012, where we see the camera roll around them in a long tracking shot, and then we see the team finally assemble together. So again, really cool reference and nod to the first Avengers film. Now, in the underground tunnel, when Danny accidentally, inadvertently opens up the bones of the dragon door with his iron fist, if you notice the dragon when the camera pans out, you'll notice that the dragon looks just like it does on the chest of his tattoo. It's positioned the exact same way. Now, when Stick starts tying up Danny, or as Stick likes to call him, a thundering dumbass, we get to see, I believe it says Squirrel behind Danny, and that's a nod and a reference to Squirrel Girl. Next, we got that Stan Lee cameo we always get where he's an NYPD spokesman or an NYPD officer in a picture, and we get it when Matt Murdock and Jessica Jones are kind of following each other, and then Jessica starts following him, and we see a couple shots of the picture closed up, so that was really cool seeing that. Also, we get a few MCU connections, rather, from the actual Marvel Cinematic Universe, not the Netflix universe. We hear that there was the incident. This is, of course, a reference to the Battle of New York. We also, in Karen Page's office, which used used to be Ben Urich's office, who was, of course, killed in season 1. We see that there's a couple articles. One is of the Battle of New York. The other one to the left of that is of the Harlem Brawl, which the Harlem Brawl is, of course, the Incredible Hulk versus Abomination back in 2008's The Incredible Hulk. So that just, again, shows you the connection there. I don't believe I saw Stark Tower in any of the 8 episodes. If any of you did, let me know in the comment section below, but that could be in reference to, in Spider-Man Homecoming, Tony Stark did sell Stark Tower. In my speculative, imagination, hopefully it was to Oscorp, to Norman Osborn, but, we'll see who that if that happens. But I thought that was interesting. There was no Stark Tower, because if you remember in Jessica Jones, I don't remember if any of the episodes we did see Stark Tower, but on the on one of the covers or one of the posters, you definitely see Stark Tower. The Punisher, no, he's not in the show, but if you do wait and do the Marvel thing at the end of episode 8 and you see the end credits, you do get to see the Punisher, and he starts, we get to see him like breaking all hell loose and killing people, doing his thing, being the Punisher, and also we see him taking, I believe, a sledgehammer and chomping it into the ground, making the Punisher logo. So that's really cool that we get to see a preview of the show, and I believe it is coming out in November. Born Again storyline. Now, at the end of the episode 8 here, we see that Matthew is badly wounded. He's being taken care of by a bunch of nuns, and one of them says to him, go get Sister, he's awake, go get Sister Maggie. Sister Maggie is, of course, his mother, and this is a reference to the Born Again comic where Matthew Murdock, Daredevil, is beaten down badly by the Kingpin, and he's left for dead in a taxi to drown in the East River. And what happens is he escapes narrowly, and he starts traveling down in Hell's Kitchen, and he finally makes his way to the boxing ring where his father trained for many years. And his mother finds him there where he's badly wounded, and then when he finally gains consciousness, he gets to meet his mother, who is, of course, Sister Maggie. So this is introducing the origin, basically, of that storyline, and that's catapulting us into season 3, which probably this will be the storyline. Getting to see Matthew being introduced to his mother after all these years, finally, and then also what happened in that storyline too. I'm not going to get into it in this video, but Karen Page has a major drug problem in that comic book storyline. So it's going to be interesting if they're going to explore that in season 3 as well. And also, I'm really hoping that we get to see Bullseye in season 3, because I've been waiting to see him on this show, and of course I want to see Wilson Fisk come back for sure, because anytime we get to see Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk, I'm always happy, so that'd be great to see. Now, in this series, in this show, the original founding members are Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. In the comics, the original founding members are the Incredible Hulk, Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, and Namor the Submariner. Alexandra Reed. Now, Sigourney Weaver, this is a fun little trivia fact. Alexandra Reed, played by Sigourney Weaver, of course. Sigourney Weaver actually got this role when she found out she was cast in this role. It was her 67th birthday. And also another fun fact, Sigourney Weaver's middle name is Alexandra. This is also not the first time that Sigourney Weaver has been tapped to play a comic book villain. Bryan Singer, when he was in the early draft and stages of working on X-Men 3 before he shifted over to Superman Returns, had Sigourney Weaver in mind to play Emma Frost when he was writing the Dark Phoenix saga. And what's interesting here is that Alexandra Reed, played by Sigourney Weaver here, of course, she has such a penchant for wearing white, which is what, of course, Emma Frost does. But what's interesting to note is it's not, we don't really know that if Bryan Singer actually did tell Sigourney Weaver that he wanted to cast her in this role. But still, it's all interesting to see how it comes back to her wearing white again all the time. When Danny Rand uses the Iron Fist to punch Luke Cage across the cheekbone, it's the exact same visual shot of what happened in Luke Cage when the thug in the Chinese restaurant tried to punch him across the face and his bone and hand just shattered and the bone was sticking out in a nasty form inversion way. But this is the exact same way, except the difference here is that Danny knocked Luke a few feet back. So that was a really interesting visual tie back to Luke Cage. Phase 2, loss of hands and limbs, mirroring the Star Wars universe. Now, I'm going to kind of just really quickly go into which ones, even though you probably already know, just because I want to seem like a smartass. So, really quickly, now going into the Phase 2 movies, we got first Iron Man 3. Aldrich Killian has the extremist arm that's heated up. Tony Stark cuts it off, so there's the first one. This is, of course, reference back to Empire Strikes Back and all the original Star Wars movies where someone loses a hand. After that, we got my favorite Thor movie, Thor: The Dark World, where Loki plays a trick and pretends to cut off Thor's hand. We then get into Captain America: The Winter Soldier. We see that in a flashback, I believe it was, where Bucky kind of loses his arm and Arnim Zola is the one who replaces it with the vibranium arm. We then get into Guardians of the Galaxy. We see that Gamora cuts off both of Groot's arms, and then we also see when Nebula is escaping after fighting with Gamora and the climactic battle, she loses also her arm, which is also a plot point in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And then after that, we got, of course, Avengers Age of Ultron, where Ultron cuts off Ulysses Klaue's arm, played by the man, Andy Serkis. Sorry, that was my shitty Gollum impression. Not very good, I know. Yeah, we got him cutting his arm off. And Ant-Man, that is still a Phase 2 film. I don't remember whose arm was cut off. It's been a little bit since I've seen that film, but if you remember whose arm was cut off in that movie, if someone's arm was, let me know in here. But, of course, the ones we do get in this are we see Stick gets his arm cut off, and I thought that was ironic and funny. Stick had to cut off his hand to escape from the hand, so very interesting, and he's a badass. And, of course, as I referenced earlier in this video, we get to see Misty's arm and her hand cut off as well. So again, just referencing the love of Star Wars and loss of limbs as you see in the original trilogy Star Wars films. Now we got Matthew Murdock putting on the scarf, or what Jessica Jones likes to call that he looks like an asshole. When he puts that scarf on, it's a nod and a reference back to season 1 of Daredevil where he's wearing the black suit. Also, the final Easter egg reference and trivia we're going to give on this video is when Madame Gao and Alexandra are meeting in the second time they meet on that rooftop location. What's interesting about this rooftop location is in the 2002 film Spider-Man, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire, when after the first battle between Spider-Man and Green Goblin, he's swinging through the city with Mary Jane and he drops her off on this exact same rooftop. Also, in season 1 of Daredevil, one of the meetings between Madame Gao and Wilson Fisk is on this exact same rooftop. So even though Spider-Man is not connected to this universe, it's still a significant portion in the Marvel, just Marvel as a whole, just seeing that rooftop. So it's a very cool visual aid, that specific rooftop. Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. I'm sure there are some other Easter eggs, references, and trivia, other matter things that I am missing. If there are, please let me know, let us know in the comment section below. And if you guys like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button. See you guys next time.